That's the
Okay.
description I've got in the report.
But not, so therefore not what we would call the quintessential grays, or even like the description of the beings from the Aztec crash.
More humanoid looking.
Yeah.
More humanoid, but not your typical gray. Certainly not.
Right.
Certainly not.
Yeah.
Now, Arthur Stanzel, he was an expert in engine test cells. He was responsible for investigating the blast effects on buildings. He was also an expert in aircraft landing gear. And he was on assignment at the Atomic Proving Ground in Nevada during Operation Upshot Knot Hole. That was spring 1953, is exactly the time frame of the Kingman, Arizona crash.
Right.
So just to move forward here, it's at night. There were 40 scientists that came from Indian Springs Airfield that boarded a bus, which was a GM Model 3301. 40 of them boarded this bus, and they made a very long trip on unimproved dirt roads to the crash site at Kingman. And when they got there, Richard, they found that this craft was embedded into the sand about a 15-degree angle. There were 2 spotlights shining on the craft, which is what you see here in the next illustration.
Mm-hmm.
And that was done by John McNeil, so he gets credit for that. A curved entry hatch, we talked about that before. It was 3.5 feet by 1.5 feet. It had no hinges whatsoever. They also found that they were told that material was classified as far as what this thing was made out of. They were told it was classified. And this is an interesting point too that Harry
in other words, the material of the craft itself.
The material of the craft apparently was classified as far as what it was made out of. How they determined that, I'm not sure, but that's what these scientists were told.
Well, I would just hypothesize that, I mean, it's my own opinion, at least currently, that the material science of these beings is one of the most important things about what we've learned. I mean, their ability to create certain materials, I mean, even perhaps more than propulsion itself, their material science could be of unbelievably immense value, and of course it'd be classified.
Yep. Each scientist, Richard, was brought out of the bus according to their expertise. So you've got these 40 scientists that are brought out one by one. They were there for 1 hour. They went back in the bus and they were out of there. They got back before dawn the next day. So that's essentially what took place there. Now there were.
And how many scientists did you say? 40?
40. They were brought out individually, but they were only there for an hour. So it was
so they're like a minute and a half each.
Maybe each guy got at least a period of time to, according to their expertise, but according to Harry Drew, they were only there for an hour. So these guys were like unloaded quickly. Maybe they were brought to what they thought was their expertise and then loaded back on. Only 1 hour on site, period. So it was quick.
I wonder why. I wonder why. I mean, you go through all of this trouble to bring these brilliant guys out here, experts in their field. Is it that there was a danger to the craft, posed health risks? I don't know how they would have known this at the time.
Well, that sort of goes into Aztec a little bit, but maybe we can revisit that. But according to Harry Drew, that bus was only there for 1 hour, and then they got out of there.
Okay.
And when they were on their way back, all of them had to raise their right hand in an oath that they would not talk about what they had just been involved in. That was on the trip home. One of these scientists, he glanced in this open hatchway door, and he was reprimanded immediately.
Yeah.
This thing it had kind of a light shining out of it. Now, the next part is the retrieval operation. So we've got this disc. It's at a 15-degree, 20-degree angle. The Army Corps of Engineers brought in an M25 tank transporter with a long 18-wheeler trailer in back of it. That came from Camp Irwin, and they built a cradle, Richard, out of 8x8 wooden beams. And they propped this disc-shaped craft up on this cradle, which was still at a 15-degree angle. It was not sitting level. So that's something that should be specified as well. Now, next thing is they started evacuating that area, heading toward the Hoover Dam, trying to cross the Colorado River. But since this thing is about 30 feet in diameter, there's a number of light fixtures that you can see on the road going across the Hoover Dam. Now, they could not navigate around those light fixtures, and since there was traffic at the time, they couldn't make it really obvious. So they decided to divert to a put-in that's about 250 to 300 feet north of the north wall of the Hoover Dam, trying to cross the Colorado River.
Good grief.
So so you can picture the scene now. So you've got an M25 tank transporter. You've got these wooden cradle or beams that made up a cradle that held this dish-shaped craft that's 30 feet in diameter, 14 feet tall. And so what they figured out is the Army Corps of Engineers, now this is all at night, this is a chaotic situation, there's yelling going on, they've got to get this thing out of there quickly, they don't want to make it too obvious. So they strung a cable across the Colorado River, and they brought a barge down the Colorado River, and they drove this tank transporter onto the barge. And this is what you've seen in the next illustration here. And they started going across the Colorado River, and Richard, the cable snapped. And so this whole barge is going down the Colorado River, only a couple hundred feet or so. And according to Harry Drew, Richard, the outer edge of the disc impacted the north wall of the Hoover Dam. So drain the water down from the Hoover Dam. To this day, Richard, there might be a scratch mark or dent mark, which would partially confirm the whole retrieval operation.
I'd like to be able to see that scratch or dent for sure.
Yep. So they strung another cable across. They eventually got the whole works across the Colorado River. Now, here is the part that is a little bit controversial about this case. I have to bring it up. It's part of the story.
The only part that's controversial?
Yeah. Okay. Now, according to Harry Drew, they brought this craft to a remote operating facility at Groom Lake. So again, this is 1953.
Oh yeah.
Now,
you and I have discussed this before. This is a bit early for Groom.
Yes. U-2 spy plane flights, first flight was in 1955. There was nothing at Groom Lake in 1953. However, Harry Drew insists that there was a remote operating facility, maybe just some rudimentary hangars at Groom Lake in 1953, which got this whole thing going. So, I have to present this as a historian, good or bad. The fact remains that first flight of the U-2 was 1955. I don't know of any facilities being there as early as 1953, but according to Harry Drew, there was. So I'm presenting it as is.
Well, I mean, I guess we could say in theory it would be possible to have something there prior to 55, of course.
It would be possible.
And that it wouldn't be surprising if you really think long and hard of it. If you assume the UFO phenomenon is real and that materials have been studied before, earlier than 1955, Groom could have been selected as a site. It could have also been deemed to be useful for experimental aircraft like the U-2. And so is it hard to imagine that the U-2 would provide the perfect explanation as to why Groom was developed? Because it's legitimate on the one hand. I mean, it is a legitimate use for Groom Lake. And also it just takes questions away from anything else going on at Groom. I mean, we've got good reason to believe that there's much more going on at Groom in terms of UFO tech. So in a sense, I don't see it as an outrageous possibility, but
it's not a deal breaker.
Yeah.
No, it's certainly possible. It's certainly possible. And I want to give credit to Jim Nichols, who did the beautiful oil color painting of the M25 with the disc on the craft itself. So.
Yeah, that's a very, very nice rendition indeed. Fascinating case, Michael.
Yep.
And this is one of these, it really could be, don't you think, that the Kingman case is one of those dark horse candidates, as it were, like the one that people have traditionally ignored, but that could actually be a significant UFO crash retrieval. And I'm just thinking most recently of the leaked notes by Dr. Eric Davis, almost certainly from the files of the late Dr. Edgar Mitchell, where Dr. Davis is talking to retired Admiral Thomas R. Wilson about the program to study this technology. And one of the statements Wilson said to Davis is that he had learned that these scientists had in their possession what appeared to be a fully non-damaged flying saucer.
That's right.
That they believed could fly. And so maybe it was this one.
Richard, you know the statement, all roads lead to Rome?
Yeah.
Okay. And, when it talks about UFO crash retrieval cases, it appears, Richard, that all roads lead to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. It just keep on getting story after story of these things being brought there, shipped there under cover of darkness. So many of these accounts of Wright-Patterson Air Force Base being the hub of where these things end up.
Absolutely. We all talk about Area 51, S4, and so on, but Groom Lake. But yeah, I think Wright-Pat is, without a doubt, takes precedence over any others. I think so. And would you, this is a little off topic, but do you give credence to the rumors of large underground facilities at Wright-Patterson?
You would think they'd have to have something like that.
I would think so. I mean, officially, I don't think they acknowledge anything like this, but you hear about this over and over again. And I know Don Schmidt and Tom Carey in their book on Wright-Pat certainly give that credit.
Okay, Richard, I want to move on to the UFO warehouse.
Okay.
So the source for this,
1963?
This is 1955, the UFO warehouse case. Yep.
Okay.
Source for this is the Leonard Stringfield dictation notes. I was given access to this collection back in 2013 by the MUFON governing body, and basically we had an agreement that if I would review the files and put together a neatly compact booklet in an ebook format, that they would open up the files to me, and that's exactly what I did. So I followed.
Michael, is this one of the cases he talks about in his crash retrieval updates, his status report updates?
A little bit, yes. It's part of the Stringfield collection. Yes.
This is we didn't discuss this beforehand, you and I, but I believe that I too am familiar with this, but I will really want to hear you describe this.
Oh, sure. So the source for this is Leonard Stringfield, who spoke to Charles Wilhelm. So he's the source. He spoke to a Mrs. G, who was dying of cancer at the time. So this is back in 1955 when this actually occurred. Now, she was employed at Wright Field during the 1940s and 1950s before it was named Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. She worked in the Foreign Materials Division, and she held a top secret security clearance. And her job, according to Charles Wilhelm, was to catalog any foreign materials that came into the base. And she told Wilhelm that in 1955, she cataloged the contents taken from the interior of a crashed UFO. So if this took place in 1955, it could have been the 1953 Kingman, or it could have been the 1948 Aztec. That's all within that time frame. Could have been either one of those.
Sure.
She said that there were over 1,000 components that were cataloged, and everything, Richard, was photographed and tagged within this warehouse. She also said that she saw a cart that was wheeled past her that had two bodies on it. These were 4 to 5 feet in length. They were packed in dry ice in some type of chemical. They were human looking with disproportionately large heads and slanted eyes. And she told the account to Wilhelm in 1959, 6 months prior to before she died. This is what she told Wilhelm, quote, "Uncle Sam can't do anything to me once I'm in the grave," end quote. Right. So she was going for broke.
If I'm not mistaken, Wilhelm was a young person at this time. I believe he was her neighbor, unless I'm getting my stories mixed up. But I recall that statement. It's a powerful one.
Mm-hmm. So, like, if they had this case bagged and tagged and photographed, they must have others. And this just reinforces this concept that there being at least one or multiple warehouses, one of which has got to be Wright-Patterson Air Force Base.
Yes, I certainly believe that. And, there's a number of other really good, entry points into the whole Wright-Pat story. James Clarkson wrote a very good book on the late June Crane,
right?
Who was a administrative assistant at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. And James got to interview her toward the end of her life. I guess that was over 20 years ago now, but she got a lot of audio recordings of their conversation. You can hear her, and she's a very, very sharp lady who just at the end of her life decided, you know what, I'm going to talk about what I what I saw as well, and I was at Wright-Patterson. There's quite a few of those stories about Wright-Pat, and I think there's just so, you said in one of our previous interviews, look, if there's 3 independent references to a specific thing, you've got to at least consider the likelihood that we've got something. And I think with Wright-Patterson, there's a lot more than 3.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. Yep. Yeah. So let's move on to the Marine December 1963 case.
Yes.
Okay. So this is Richard literally days and weeks after the Kennedy assassination. I don't know if there's a connection, but this is just a few weeks after Kennedy was assassinated, December 1963. This statement is also a part of the Leonard Stringfield collection. I interviewed the gentleman who interviewed the U.S. Marine who was stationed in 1963 at Cherry Point, North Carolina. Okay. And according to this Marine, I have his name. I did a videotape interview with the gentleman who interviewed him. And according to this Marine, he was taken on a plane with blacked out windows, and he was flown about 2.5 hours from Cherry Point, North Carolina to an undisclosed location that even he didn't know. It could have been a hangar, it could have been a building. Either way, he was brought into this building, very large. Bay doors were open. When he looked inside, what he saw, Richard, was a 40-foot diameter disc-shaped craft. It was 15 feet tall. It kind of looked like a large hamburger. It had about, I would guess, approximately 9 elliptical or egg-shaped cutout or portholes, each one of them being opaque in color. So you couldn't exactly look inside this craft through these opaque portholes. Each one of these portholes was indented about 1 inch into the skin of the craft. So there was a 1-inch lip between the outer skin of the craft and the outer wall of this opaque window. There was an entry hatch on the bottom section of this craft that, according to the primary eyewitness, basically he stated that this entry hatch had seams that were so fully integrated into this craft you could not put a razor blade in between them.
That's impressive.
Yep, exactly what we hear about the large blocks on the Giza Plateau in Cairo. You couldn't put a razor blade in there either. Same type thing here.
Interesting.
Now, yep. He was told to guard this craft for a period of 2 weeks. There was one time when he was at the craft alone and he took a Minox camera in there, and Richard, he got a photograph of this thing.
Did he?
Yeah, he got a photograph. However,
and again, I just want to make sure. So we call it the U.S. Marine encounter, but that is because the primary witness was a United States Marine.
Yes, he was a Marine.
He was brought in for security detail, is what it sounds like.
That is correct. That is correct.
Okay.
Yep.
We don't know that this was a U.S. Marine military encounter, though.
We do not know if this was a U.S. Marine encounter. No, this was some type of retrieval, and he was just a Marine called on duty to guard this craft.
Right. But he had a camera.
He had a camera. Yep. He had a camera.
Photographed this thing.
Yep. And so you'll see in the first drawing that I did, the craft with the dimensions, and then this whole thing on the second drawing, the whole craft was suspended 5 feet off the floor with these, could have been 8 by 8 inch wooden timbers. But what they did, Richard, is they built aircraft scaffolding around the entire craft so that these lab coat technicians could walk around this craft at eye level and get a good look at this thing. So we've got these multiple accounts of these craft being in hangars, suspended off the floor by beams of some kind.
Now, the photograph this Marine took, what do we know about that?
The photograph was destroyed, Richard, in a flood in 1986. So we were this close to getting a photograph of this craft. However, I got the next best thing. Speaking to the gentleman who interviewed the Marine, I was able to secure copies of his original sketches of the craft.
Really?
And these drawings are based off of his original sketches.
Fascinating, Michael.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we have that. No doubt about it. We've got the original sketches. Now, here's the next thing. On the floor of this facility, could it be a hangar, could it be a building, there was a white circle painted just below the craft itself. And this Marine was told to shoot first and ask questions later of anyone, repeat, anyone who was trying to breach that circle. And there was a U.S. Navy admiral, who was getting very close to going beyond that circle. He was almost shot dead, Richard.
Good grief.
Came within a few seconds of being shot dead.
Now, Michael, you are very familiar with this story. And
yes.
Where, the disadvantage that investigators have with this case is we don't know who this original man was. Or at least, do you have this man's name?
I have his name, yes. Yeah. I have his name.
So you do. So that's good. So is there the possibility then that some investigative work on this original witness has been done? I mean, I guess my question has to do with how reliable can we outsiders feel in the validity of this case and of this witness about whom we don't know anything about this man. And it's, we don't have the photograph, but in terms of the detail of the information, I'm assuming it seems to you that the details all rather match and they seem genuine to you. This seems like a genuine case, I guess.
Yes, I do have his name, Richard. I know where he lives approximately back in 1986. I have tried to track him down. I can't do it. I don't know where he is. The trail has gone too cold. I feel he is still alive at this time.
He very well could be. Yes, he would be maybe in his 80s.
Yep, he could very well be still alive. I've got his original sketches. I've got the original testimony from the interview that was done with the gentleman that I did the videotape interview, and I think it all jives, Richard. The whole thing jives because what he talks about is exactly what we hear about in these other cases. Now, my booklet has 119 UFO crash retrieval cases, and a lot of these have overlapping details, like things being sent to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, things being transported on M25 tank transporters. So it really all jives, Richard.